My parents always saw me as the black sheep of the family. Now that I'm successful, they're demanding I fund my brother's lifestyle. But I left them with one final gift they never saw coming. Oh, the sting of betrayal. I thought selling my company for a whopping $75 million would finally earn my parents' love, finally make them truly see me. Instead, it exposed a heartbreaking family dynamic so rotten, so deeply unfair, that it ultimately fractured us forever. But also, surprisingly, set me free. My name is Brandon. I'm 34 now, and the founder of Secure Shield Technologies. But growing up, in a modest suburban home in Columbus, Ohio, I was always the family's black sheep. The perpetual disappointment. My younger brother, Kyle, though, he was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. While other kids were trading baseball cards, I was lost in the intricate circuits of old radios, a fascination my parents never quite understood. Why can't you just play normal things like other kids? My dad would sigh, his disappointment a constant hum in the background. Of my childhood, everything shifted when Kyle was born. He was everything I wasn't: outgoing, athletic, conventionally talented. The comparisons became relentless. Kyle brought home perfect report cards. My grades were a roller coaster, brilliant in math and science, abysmal in subjects that bored me. Why can't you be more like your brother? That phrase became the relentless soundtrack of my youth. When Kyle hit his first home run at 7, there was a massive celebration. 2 weeks later, when I won first place in a regional programming competition against kids twice my age, a distracted, "That's nice, Brandon," as my mom prepped for Kyle's next soccer tournament. I still remember a dinner when I was 14. I'd just been accepted into a prestigious summer coding camp at MIT, a program usually for high school juniors. Barely containing my excitement, I blurted it out. My dad barely looked up. "That's going to be expensive, Brandon. We're already stretched thin with Kyle's travel baseball." Before I could respond, Kyle interjected. "Coach said I might be team captain next season." The conversation instantly pivoted. My mom beamed. "That's wonderful, sweetie. Captain as a freshman? Incredible." My MIT acceptance faded into background noise, a forgotten whisper. High school only widened the chasm. Kyle was the popular sports star, homecoming king, student body president. I retreated to the computer lab, finding solace in code and a few friends who shared my interests, firmly at the bottom of the social hierarchy. My parents' disappointment grew overt. When I told my dad I wanted to start my own tech company, he actually laughed. "Be realistic, Brandon. Those Silicon Valley types are exceptional. You need something stable like accounting." Meanwhile, Kyle's college baseball dreams were bankrolled with expensive camps and private coaching. The breaking point arrived during my senior year. I had partial scholarships to state universities for computer science, but nothing full. During a college finance discussion, my father laid it bare. "We've been saving for Kyle's education since he was born. His athletic scholarship prospects are good, but we need to be prepared. We just don't have extra for your schooling." When I protested the unfairness, my mother seemed genuinely perplexed. "Kyle has real potential, Brandon. We need to invest in his future." My voice rose, years of suppressed hurt finally bubbling over. "And what about my future?" My father's response cut deep. "Let's be honest, Brandon. You've always been different. Not everyone is destined for greatness. Some people just need to find a stable job and be content." That night, I overheard them talking. "I worry about Brandon," my mother said. "He's just so odd. Do you think we did something wrong?" "He's just wasted potential," my father replied. A disappointment to the family. Thank God we have Kyle. Those words burned into my soul. They crystallized a determination that would fuel me through the darkest times. That night, I made a promise. I would prove them wrong. I would become successful on my own terms, without their support or validation. The emotional distance became a chasm. They cheered loudly at Kyle's games, hundreds of photos. My high school graduation, where I was valedictorian. They barely acknowledged it. My speech was delivered to an audience where my own parents sat stone-faced, checking their watches, eager to leave for Kyle's baseball tournament. I realized a painful truth. In their eyes, I wasn't just a different kind of son. I was competition for their love, a competition I was never meant to win. Kyle wasn't just the favorite. He was the only child they truly wanted. I was the mistake, the square peg they kept trying to hammer into a round hole until both were damaged beyond repair. For college, I chose a state university computer science program with a 60% merit scholarship. I still remember asking for help with the rest. "We just don't have it, Brandon," my father said flatly. "We're putting everything extra aside for Kyle's future. He might need to attend a private university, but that's 2 years away. Kyle isn't even a junior." I argued. My mother's response was telling. "We need to be prepared. His future is important." The unspoken implication hung heavy. Mine wasn't. That fall, I moved into a cramped dorm with $217 to my name. Within a week, I'd secured 3 jobs: 5:30 a.m. shifts at the coffee shop, evenings at the library, weekends in the computer lab. I averaged 4 hours of sleep a night. My roommate, Derek, from a wealthy family, couldn't fathom it. "Dude, just ask your parents for money," he suggested. "Not an option," I replied. I never explained further. Despite the exhaustion, I maintained a 4.0 GPA and started developing my first app, a simple campus navigation tool. I coded between shifts, often until 2 or 3 a.m., grabbing a quick nap before the coffee shop. By the end of freshman year, I was running on fumes. During finals week, I collapsed in the computer lab. I woke up to Professor Jenkins, not even my instructor, shaking my shoulder. He'd noticed my dedication during his late-night visits. "You can't keep going like this," he said. "You're going to burn out." Professor Jenkins became the mentor I never expected. He arranged a research stipend so I could drop one job. More importantly, he believed in my potential when no one else did. Meanwhile, Kyle was recruited by Division II colleges, partial athletic scholarships. My parents spent thousands on college visits, highlight reels, training camps. I saw it all on my mother's Facebook, proudly documenting every step of Kyle's journey, while my own existence remained unacknowledged. My sophomore year, I launched my campus navigation app with $10,000 in seed funding from an angel investor, thanks to Professor Jenkins. It was a disaster. Servers crashed, data lost. Within a week, the investor pulled out, leaving me with crushing guilt and debt. I fell into a deep depression, barely leaving my room. Professor Jenkins intervened again, forcing me to coffee. "Every entrepreneur fails," he said firmly. "The successful ones are just the ones who get back up." That Christmas, I reluctantly went home. The moment I walked in, I felt like a stranger. My childhood room had been converted into a shrine to Kyle's achievements, trophies, medals, photos. Everywhere. I was relegated to the pull-out couch in the basement. At the holiday gathering, my father gestured towards me while telling my uncle about Kyle's prospects. "Brandon's still figuring things out," he dismissed, despite my perfect grades and multiple jobs. Later, when I mentioned my failed app, he scoffed. "See, this is why we told you to choose something practical. Not everyone is cut out for innovation." The argument that followed was explosive. Years of resentment poured out. My mother's response was chilling. "We've always treated you both the same. You've just always been difficult, Brandon. Always so sensitive and demanding." I left that night, driving back to campus in a snowstorm, knowing I wouldn't return for a long time. The next semester was my lowest point. My cheap off-campus housing fell through. For 2 weeks, I slept in my car in the campus parking lot, showering at the gym, studying in the 24-hour library. I seriously considered dropping out. Was all this struggle worth it? The turning point came from an unexpected source. Coding at an all-night diner, the only place I could afford with free Wi-Fi, I struck up a conversation with an older man, a former software engineer who'd lost everything in the dot-com bust. "Don't make my mistake," he told me, his eyes filled with regret. "I gave up after one failure. One. That's all it took to derail my entire life." His words haunted me. The next morning, I approached the financial aid office, secured emergency housing assistance, and recommitted. If I was going to succeed, it would be without the safety net of family support my peers took for granted. I moved into a tiny studio apartment with peeling paint and unreliable heat. It was mine, a space to work and dream without judgment. Surrounded by ramen noodle packages and salvaged computer equipment, I began to rebuild. while Kyle continued to receive unwavering parental support, a new car for his 18th birthday, fully funded spring break trips to Cancun. I worked through holidays and summers, accumulating knowledge and experience that would prove far more valuable than any material gift. My parents never asked if I needed help. I never asked. Pride and pain formed an impenetrable barrier. The idea that would change my life came during my junior year. Working a night shift at a data processing company, I witnessed a security breach. Their outdated protocols left them vulnerable, and their response was just to patch, not to fix the core flaws. There has to be a better way, I told Professor Jenkins. Current security software is reactive, not proactive. What if we could create something that anticipates breaches? That spark became Secure Shield Technologies. For 6 grueling months, I dedicated every free moment to its framework. Classes, work, coding until 3 or 4 a.m. Ramen, energy drinks, pure determination. By senior year, I had a promising prototype, but no business savvy. That changed at a campus tech meetup when I met Sarah Donovan, an MBA student. Unlike most, she immediately grasped the market potential. You're solving a problem most companies don't even realize they have yet, she said. That's the holy grail of innovation. Sarah became my business partner, her skills complementing mine perfectly. She built the business plan, market analysis, pitch deck. Our first investment came from Professor Jenkins, $20,000 of his own savings. Consider it an investment in the future. He waved away my concerns. Sometimes you have to bet on the person, not just the product. That kept us afloat. Sarah and I pitched to 47 investors over 6 months. We got 46 rejections, each one chipping away at my fragile self-confidence. Interesting technology, they'd say, but you're too young, too inexperienced. The 47th pitch changed everything. Marcel Winters, a veteran tech investor, saw what others missed. Everyone is focusing on what you haven't done, he said. I'm more interested in what you've accomplished. With virtually no resources, imagine what you could do with proper funding. Marcel invested $100,000 for a 15% stake. It felt enormous. Enough to rent a small office, buy equipment, pay ourselves modest salaries. I could finally quit my night jobs. Our first office was a converted storage room above a Chinese restaurant, barely 400 square feet, unreliable AC, and the constant smell of fried rice. But it was ours. Hanging our hand-printed Secure Shield sign on that door remains one of my proudest memories. The breakthrough came 6 months later when a mid-sized healthcare provider experienced a ransomware attack. Our software detected and neutralized before it could encrypt patient records. Word spread. Suddenly, companies that had ignored us were calling. Our first major client, Meridian Health Systems, signed a 3-year, $350,000 contract. That night, alone in our tiny office, I finally allowed myself to believe success might actually be possible. We hired 2 employees and worked 14-hour days, 7 days a week, fueled by our mission. As the company grew, I adjusted to financial stability. My first significant purchase was a modest 2-bedroom house. Nothing extravagant, but after years of dorms, cars, and tiny apartments, it felt like a mansion. The day I got the keys, I sat alone on the empty living room floor and cried. A mixture of pride and disbelief. Industry recognition followed. Most innovative security solution at a prominent tech conference. 30 under 30 for emerging tech leaders. Each achievement brought a complicated mix of validation and lingering hurt. Success tasted sweet, but part of me still longed for the parental approval I would never receive. I tried to share emails about our first client, the Innovation Award, moving to larger offices. The responses were perfunctory. That's nice, Brandon. My mother replied to the award announcement. Kyle just got promoted to assistant manager at his company. We're so proud of him. Meanwhile, Kyle had spent 5.5 years achieving a mediocre business degree. His baseball career ended sophomore year, but my parents fully supported him, paying for his apartment, car, and living expenses. He expected a high-paying management role despite lacking skills. When he struggled, my parents blamed the economy, job market, hiring discrimination, everything but Kyle himself. They subsidized his trendy apartment and lifestyle while he found himself I, on the other hand, had been self-sufficient since 18, working multiple jobs, maintaining perfect grades, and building a company. The real game changer came in our 4th year. A series of high-profile data breaches made cybersecurity a top priority. Our proactive approach was perfectly positioned. Clients we'd pursued for years were now calling us. We secured series of funding, valuing the company at $15 million. My stake was over $6 million on paper. The first time I saw a 7-figure balance in my bank account, I stared at it for an hour, unable to process it. By our 5th year, we had 48 employees, prestigious offices in Seattle's tech district, and clients worldwide, with annual revenue exceeding $12 million. I was a respected figure, speaking at conferences, advising government committees. Then came the acquisition offer that changed everything. TechGuard Industries, one of the largest security companies in the world, offered $75 million. After weeks of negotiation, Sarah and I agreed, ensuring our employees would be retained and our technology would reach a wider market. At 32, I became a multimillionaire overnight. The scared, exhausted college student, sleeping in his car, seemed like a different person, a chapter from someone else's life. Yet, the emotional wounds of my childhood remained unhealed, a persistent ache beneath the surface of my success. The day the acquisition made business headlines, my phone rang. It was my parents' landline, a number I barely recognized. After 6 years of minimal contact, my mother's voice sounded strange. "Brandon, we just saw you in Business Weekly. Why didn't you tell us about selling your company?" Her tone was a bizarre mix of excitement and accusation, as if I'd deliberately kept secrets, rather than simply maintaining the distance they had established. "It just finalized last week," I replied, neutrally. "Well, we're just so proud," she gushed. "Always knew you'd do well with those computer things. We should have dinner soon to celebrate." The abrupt whiplash was jarring. After years of dismissal, I was suddenly the son worth acknowledging. A small, persistent part of me, the child still seeking approval, responded to the olive branch. Perhaps, I thought, success had finally made me visible. We arranged dinner at an upscale Seattle restaurant. My parents flew in, Kyle drove up from Portland. Walking in, I felt a strange mix of accomplishment and anxiety, the prodigal son returning. The awkwardness was palpable. My father extended his hand formally. My mother hugged me stiffly. Kyle, sporting an expensive watch that seemed at odds with his entry-level position, offered a tight, eyeless smile. "Quite a place," my father commented, glancing around. "Must be nice to afford this kind of lifestyle." The underlying message was clear: my wealth, not my well-being, was the reason for this reunion. Throughout dinner, they peppered me with questions about the acquisition, focusing solely on the financial aspects, little interest in the actual work. When I tried to share stories about the early struggles, my mother nodded distractedly, then shifted to Kyle's recent promotion to regional sales representative. "He's on track for management," she said proudly. "Always had natural leadership abilities." My father leaned forward. "So, Brandon, what are you doing with all that money? Good investments, I hope." Before I could answer, he launched into a rehearsed speech. "You know, we always believed in you. Always knew you had potential. We just showed it differently because you were always so independent." The revisionist history was jarring. In their new narrative, they were supportive parents, not the ones who'd called me a disappointment, and refused to fund my education while fully funding Kyle's. As the evening progressed, Kyle grew sullen, making passive-aggressive comments about lucky breaks and people who have all the advantages. The irony, given our paths, was apparently lost on him. Over dessert, my mother finally revealed the true purpose. "Kyle's been going through a rough patch," she confided. "His company downsized, and he's between positions. Outstanding employee, of course," my father jumped in. "Just corporate politics, you know." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said sincerely, turning to Kyle. "I have some great contacts in tech if you're interested. We're always looking for good sales talent." Kyle's expression soured. "I'm not looking for charity," he snapped. My mother patted his hand. "Kyle's exploring options, but in the meantime, there are some financial considerations. His lease is up next month. Family should help family," my father added pointedly. Now that you're in a position to do so. The real agenda became crystal clear. I wasn't invited for reconciliation. I was an ATM. Despite the revelation, I made a genuine offer. I'd be happy to help Kyle network and find a position where his skills would be valued. I said, I know how tough the job market can be. Silence. Kyle stared at his plate. My parents exchanged glances. That's thoughtful, my mother finally said, her tone indicating it was anything but. But what Kyle really needs right now is some breathing room, financial stability while he considers his next move. What exactly are you asking for? I asked directly. My father cleared his throat. We thought perhaps a loan. Something to tide him over for 6 months or so. Say, $50,000, just until he lands on his feet. The amount was significant, not because I couldn't afford it, but because it revealed their calculated plan. This wasn't spontaneous, it was an extraction. I promised to consider it and ended the evening with polite but distant goodbyes. Driving home, I felt a profound disappointment. The reconnection I had secretly hoped for was nothing more than a financial transaction. Over the next few weeks, the calls and texts from my parents increased, always circling back to Kyle's temporary problems, with subtle guilt trips about childhood, family obligations, and how parents sacrifice everything for their children, conveniently ignoring their sacrifices had been exclusively for Kyle. Curious, I discreetly inquired about Kyle through mutual connections. What I discovered was troubling. Kyle had been fired, not downsized, after missing sales targets for 3 consecutive quarters. Despite his dire financial straits, his Instagram showed recent posts from expensive restaurants, a ski trip, and photos of a brand new sports car. Most concerning was information from a former colleague, Kyle's regular visits to casinos and online gambling sites. The pieces clicked. Erratic employment, constant need for loans, a lavish lifestyle beyond his means. I arranged a meeting, one more attempt to address the truth. We met at my parents' hotel suite. Before we discuss any financial assistance, I began carefully. I think we need to address the actual issues Kyle is facing. My mother's brow furrowed. What do you mean? He told you he's between jobs. I'm concerned there might be a gambling problem, I said, as gently as possible. The pattern of behavior suggests, Kyle exploded. You've been spying on me. Who the hell do you think you are? My father stood up, face flushed. This is ridiculous. Kyle has had some bad luck, that's all. Not everyone can be a tech genius with million-dollar investors. I'm not judging, I insisted. I'm concerned. If there's a gambling addiction, money won't solve the problem. It might make it worse. My mother's expression hardened. This is just like you, Brandon. Always thinking you're better than everyone else. Always the outsider. Never really part of this family. Her words struck with precision, targeting the deepest insecurity of my childhood. In that moment, I realized a painful truth. No amount of success would ever change how they saw me. I would always be the other son, the one who didn't quite belong. The meeting ended with my father's parting shot. Kyle has always been there for us. Always been the good son. I guess we know where your priorities lie. As they left, I felt a strange mixture of grief and liberation. The fantasy of finally earning their approval through success dissolved, leaving behind the reality that some relationships cannot be healed, no matter how much we might wish. Otherwise, 2 months of blessed silence followed. I threw myself into new projects, mentored young entrepreneurs, and started therapy to address the lingering pain. The distance felt healthy, a necessary boundary. Then came the frantic midnight call that shattered my hard-won peace. Brandon, you need to help us right now. My mother's voice was shrill with panic. Kyle is in serious trouble. The story spilled out in disjointed fragments. Kyle had accumulated gambling, debts exceeding $100,000. Some creditors weren't the polite type. Threats had been made. We've mortgaged the house, my father admitted, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. Took out a second mortgage to cover what we could, but it's not enough. They're saying they'll hurt him if he doesn't pay the rest by the end of the month. The underlying message was clear. They expected me to write a check and make the problem disappear, not offer counsel or help with the addiction. Just cash to enable the next cycle of destruction. This is serious, I acknowledged. Kyle needs professional help, both for his safety and for the gambling addiction. My father's voice hardened. There's no addiction. He just got over his head. Are you going to help your brother or not? I promised to consider options and hung up, immediately contacting my financial advisor and a therapist specializing in addiction and family systems. Over the next week, I educated myself extensively about gambling addiction, enabling behaviors, and how financial bailouts perpetuate, rather than solve, underlying issues. My research led me to develop a comprehensive support plan. I would pay off Kyle's dangerous debts directly to ensure his safety, but the rest of my assistance would be structured around recovery, residential treatment for his addiction, ongoing therapy, financial counseling, and a graduated system of support tied to his progress. No direct cash to Kyle or my parents. When I presented this plan during a video call, their reaction was immediate and negative. This is ridiculous. Kyle snarled. I don't need to be locked up in some rehab place. I just need to clear these debts and get a fresh start. My mother sided with him instantly. Brandon, you're being controlling. Your brother just needs your help, not all these conditions. These aren't conditions, I explained patiently. This is actual help. Giving Kyle money without addressing the gambling is like giving an alcoholic a bottle of whiskey. My father's face reddened. Don't you dare compare your brother to some addict. He made some mistakes, that's all. Everyone makes mistakes. Dad, I said quietly, I've made more mistakes than most. The difference is I've had to face consequences for mine. Kyle never has. The conversation deteriorated. Kyle accused me of showing off my success, of using the situation to make him look bad. My parents portrayed my evidence-based approach as a power play rather than genuine concern. By the end, we were back where we started, them demanding cash, me offering real help. The situation escalated a week later when Kyle showed up at my home unannounced, clearly intoxicated. My security system alerted me to shouting at my front gate around 11:30 p.m. Through the camera, I saw Kyle pounding the intercom. Open up, you self-righteous ass, he slurred. You think you're so much better than everyone else with your fancy house and your millions. I spoke through the intercom, trying to calm him. Kyle, you're drunk. Let me call you an Uber to get you back to your hotel safely. I don't need your charity, he spat. I need what's owed to me. Mom and Dad gave you everything, all their attention, because you were the special one who needed extra help. Now you won't even help your own brother. His revisionist history of our childhood was so wildly inaccurate. It would have been laughable if it weren't so painful. As he continued, shouting and began throwing small rocks at the security camera, I had no choice but to call private security. When they arrived, he became physically aggressive, leading them to contact local police. The fallout was immediate and severe. My parents called the next morning, beside themselves with rage. How could you have your own brother arrested? My mother sobbed, though Kyle had only been briefly detained and released without charges. He was drunk, trespassing, and becoming violent, I explained calmly. I was concerned for his safety as well as mine. He's your brother, my father growled. Family handles things privately, like the way you've handled his gambling addiction, by refinancing your retirement home and enabling destructive behavior. The conversation ended with my father's threat. You need to decide what's more important to you, your money or your family, because you can't have both. 3 days later, I received a lengthy email from my parents. The message laid out their position in no uncertain terms. Either I transfer $250,000 to help Kyle get back on his feet, or I would be permanently cut off from the family. No contact, no reconciliation, no future relationship unless I complied. The ultimatum triggered several sleepless nights. Despite everything, some stubborn part of me still craved their approval, still hoped for the loving family I had never truly had. I consulted my therapist. What do you feel is your responsibility here? She asked. I want to help Kyle, I answered honestly. But giving him money with no accountability isn't helping. It's hurting. It's perpetuating behaviors that will eventually destroy him. And my parents? They're so enmeshed with Kyle, they can't see the damage they're doing. They've built their entire identity around being his saviors. She nodded thoughtfully. Family systems often resist change, even when that change would be healthy. Your refusal to participate threatens that equilibrium. After much reflection, I drafted a response. The letter was both boundary-setting and compassionate, explaining why I couldn't enable destructive behavior while reiterating my offer of substantial support for actual recovery. I closed by saying I would always be open to a healthier relationship if they ever wanted one, but I wouldn't compromise my principles or Kyle's well-being by providing funds that would ultimately fuel his addiction. Hitting send on that email was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It felt like closing a door that had never fully opened in the first place. The response to my boundary setting was swift and vindictive. Within days, my mother began posting vague but pointed comments on social media about ungrateful children and abandonment when families need help most. These quickly evolved into more specific allegations, sharing private family matters. Heartbroken that my son would refuse to help his own brother after we sacrificed everything for his education, she wrote, conveniently forgetting they had contributed nothing to my college expenses while fully funding Kyle's. Meanwhile, Kyle's behavior became increasingly concerning. He sent threatening text messages at all hours, from guilt-tripping, "Hope you enjoy your millions while your brother suffers," to explicitly threatening, "You better watch your back. Success isn't worth much if you're not around to enjoy it." The situation reached a breaking point when Kyle appeared at my company's headquarters during a meeting with potential investors. He created a scene in the lobby, shouting accusations and demanding to see me. Security had to escort him from the premises, causing significant embarrassment. Following legal advice, I reluctantly filed for a restraining order against Kyle. The decision wasn't made lightly, but his escalating behavior had crossed from annoying to potentially dangerous. The court granted a temporary order. My parents' reaction was explosive. My father left a voicemail so filled with rage and profanity I couldn't listen to it all. My mother sent a lengthy email declaring me dead to the family and claiming I had always been cruel and calculating, even as a child. The public and private attacks took a significant emotional toll. Despite my outward success, I found myself retreating into isolation, questioning my own memories, wondering if I was indeed the villain. My therapy sessions intensified. In the midst of this turmoil came an unexpected message from my mother's sister, Aunt Caroline. We had never been particularly close. Her email was cautious but supportive. "I've been watching what's happening," she wrote. "There's more to this story than what your mother is sharing online. I'd like to talk if you're open to it." Our subsequent phone conversation revealed family dynamics I had never understood. The pattern of favoritism extended back generations. My grandfather had clearly preferred my mother over her sister, creating a dysfunctional template my mother unconsciously replicated. "Your mother needs one child to succeed and one to fail," Aunt Caroline explained. "It's the only family dynamic she knows. When you started becoming successful, it threatened the entire system." Even more shocking was her revelation about finances. Years earlier, when I'd first started earning decent money, I'd sent my parents a $10,000 anniversary gift, hoping to heal our relationship. Aunt Caroline revealed that money went directly to cover one of Kyle's gambling debts, a fact they'd hidden. "This has been going on for years," she explained. "They've been bailing him out since college, refinancing their house twice already. Your father's retirement fund is completely depleted." Armed with this new understanding, I proposed a meeting, one final attempt to address the situation honestly. I suggested a neutral location with Aunt Caroline present as a mediator. To my surprise, my parents agreed, though they insisted Kyle attend. We met at a private conference room. The tension was palpable. My parents looked older, more haggard. Kyle fidgeted nervously. Aunt Caroline's calm presence was a stark contrast to the emotional storm brewing. My father opened with an attack disguised as a question. "After all we've done for you, how could you turn your back on your family?" Rather than reacting defensively, I responded with specific examples. "What exactly did you do for me, Dad? Was it refusing to help with my college tuition while paying for Kyle's? Was it converting my childhood bedroom into a trophy room for Kyle before I even moved out? Or was it telling me I was a disappointment to the family when I was 17? My mother gasped. "We never said that. You did. I continued steadily. I heard you through the kitchen door. You said I was wasted potential and a disappointment to the family. And then you added, thank God we have. Kyle, the specific details of that night, details I had never shared, left them momentarily speechless. We may have said some things in frustration, my father finally conceded. But parents make mistakes. That doesn't justify abandoning your brother when he needs help. I haven't abandoned Kyle, I countered. I've offered substantial help, just not in the form of cash that would enable his gambling addiction. There's no addiction, my mother insisted, her voice lacking conviction. I turned to Kyle directly. Tell them the truth. How long have you been gambling? How much have you really lost? Kyle's face contorted with anger, then crumpled into something more vulnerable. To everyone's shock, he broke down. Since sophomore year of college, he admitted, tears streaming. The first time was just a poker game in the dorm. I won big and got hooked on the feeling. Then I started losing. Mom and Dad always bailed me out, so there were never any real consequences. My parents stared at him in disbelief. As he continued, I've probably lost over $300,000 total over the years. Every time I swear it's the last time, but then there's another game, another chance to win it all back. He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. I hated you for so long because you were everything I wasn't: disciplined, self-sufficient, successful. On your own terms. It was easier to blame you than face my own failures. The raw honesty of his confession shifted something in the room. For perhaps the first time, we were speaking truthfully, rather than maintaining the family mythology. We just wanted to help, my mother whispered. We thought we were supporting you. You weren't, Kyle replied bitterly. You were trapping me. Every time I failed, you rushed in to fix everything, then reminded me how lucky I was to have such devoted parents. It made me feel even more worthless. The conversation shifted to how my parents had unconsciously pitted us against each other. Kyle, as the golden child who could do no wrong. Me as the problem child who could do no right. Neither role had served either of us well. I'm offering Kyle real help, I said firmly. I'll pay for a top-tier treatment program for gambling addiction. I'll cover the dangerous debts to ensure his safety. But I won't give cash directly to enable more gambling. And what about us? My father demanded. We've sacrificed everything for this family. No, I replied quietly. You sacrificed everything for Kyle. There's a difference. The truth hung heavy in the air. Kyle surprised everyone by speaking up. I want to take Brandon's offer. I need help. Real help. Not another bailout. My parents reacted with shock and betrayal. You can't be serious, my father sputtered. You're choosing his side over ours. There shouldn't be sides in a family, Kyle responded. That's part of the problem. My mother stood up, grabbing her purse. This is ridiculous. We're your parents. We know what's best for you. As they prepared to leave, I made one final statement. I'm no longer seeking your approval. I spent most of my life trying to earn your love, never realizing it wasn't something I should have had to earn in the first place. My father's parting shot was predictable. Don't expect anything from us again. No contact, no inheritance, nothing. As the door closed behind them, a strange sense of peace washed over me. The fantasy of parental approval that had haunted me since childhood finally dissipated, replaced by the reality that family isn't always defined by blood. Sometimes it's defined by who chooses to remain when the storms come. Kyle looked at me uncertainly. Did I just destroy my relationship with Mom and Dad? No, I replied. You just took the first step toward healing it. And yourself. 6 months passed, bringing changes I never could have anticipated. The distance from my parents continued, but it no longer carried the ache of rejection. Through therapy and self-reflection, I understood that their approval was never something I could earn, not because of any deficiency in me, but because of limitations within them. Kyle completed a 90-day residential treatment program for gambling addiction, followed by intensive outpatient therapy and regular Gamblers Anonymous meetings. The transformation in him was remarkable, not just in his abstinence, but in his growing self-awareness and accountability. I never realized how much of my identity was wrapped up in being the golden child, he confessed during one of our weekly phone calls. It was a role I never asked for, but felt obligated to maintain, even when it was destroying me. Our relationship once defined by competition and resentment, gradually evolved into something resembling actual brotherhood. We discovered shared interests and values that had been obscured by our parents' dysfunctional system. For the first time, we were getting to know each other as individuals, rather than assigned roles in a family drama. My parents remained distant, occasionally sending updates through Aunt Caroline, but maintaining their position that I had betrayed the family by refusing unconditional financial support. Despite their continued rejection, I made a difficult decision regarding their future. Working with my financial advisors and attorneys, I established a trust fund specifically designed to provide for my parents' retirement and healthcare needs. The structure was carefully crafted. They could not access the principal, only the income, and funds could only be used for legitimate retirement expenses, housing, medical care, utilities, basic needs. Most importantly, none of the money could be redirected to Kyle or used to cover gambling debts. When the trust documents were finalized, I sent them to my parents with a simple note. This is my final gift to you, not because you earned it, but because it's who I choose to be. Their initial response was predictably negative. My mother called it controlling and conditional love, while my father refused to acknowledge it at all. Yet, as their financial situation deteriorated further, a direct consequence of decades of bailing out Kyle, they quietly began accepting the monthly distributions from the trust. Meanwhile, I focused on building the kind of family I had always wanted, one based on mutual respect and genuine connection, rather than obligation and control. Professor Jenkins remained a father figure. Sarah, my business partner, became like a sister. Close friends and colleagues formed a support network far more reliable than the biological family that had rejected me. Through therapy, I experienced breakthroughs, particularly around releasing my need for parental validation. You've been seeking something they fundamentally cannot provide, my therapist observed. It's like trying to draw water from a dry well. Kyle's progress and recovery brought its own challenges and rewards. After completing intensive treatment, he struggled with purpose and direction. With my encouragement, he trained as a peer counselor for gambling addiction, using his own experience to help others. For the first time, he was defining success on his own terms. I never thought I'd say this, he told me during a visit, but hitting rock bottom was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to figure out who I actually am beyond the golden child image. Approximately 8 months after our confrontation, my mother reached out tentatively. The email was brief, cautious, with none of the emotional manipulation that had characterized our previous interactions. She expressed interest in seeing me during an upcoming trip to Seattle. The lunch that followed was awkward, but it represented the first honest conversation we had ever had. There were no grand apologies or dramatic reconciliations, just small steps. I've been doing some reading about family dynamics, she admitted hesitantly. Some of it has been uncomfortable to recognize in myself. My father remained more resistant, maintaining minimal contact, still viewing my boundaries as personal attacks. Yet, even he showed small signs of evolution, occasionally asking actual questions about my life rather than making assumptions. The most unexpected development came when Kyle approached me with an idea for a foundation, supporting first-generation college students without family financial backing, students whose circumstances mirrored my own. Together, we developed a program providing not just scholarships, but mentorship, emotional support, and practical guidance. I want something good to come from our family dysfunction, Kyle explained. Maybe our story can help others avoid the same patterns. Working alongside my brother on this meaningful project healed wounds I hadn't realized still existed. We would never have the carefree childhood bond some siblings enjoy, but we were building something perhaps more valuable, a relationship based on mutual respect and shared values, rather than competition and resentment. As for my parents, our relationship remained complicated. During a rare phone call about a year after our confrontation, my father made a statement that represented perhaps the closest thing to an apology I would ever receive. We didn't always understand you, he said gruffly. Maybe we should have tried harder. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, those exist primarily in movies, but it was a small acknowledgement. I had learned to accept these modest offerings. without expecting the comprehensive recognition I had once craved. The trust fund I established for them remains active, providing for their basic needs while preventing the financial enabling that characterized their relationship with Kyle. They occasionally chafe against its restrictions, but have gradually come to appreciate the security it provides. The true gift in this journey, however, wasn't financial. It was the freedom from toxic patterns and expectations that had defined my early life. By establishing boundaries and refusing to participate in destructive family dynamics, I broke a cycle that might otherwise have continued for generations. Today, I mentor young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds, sharing not just business knowledge, but lessons about self-worth and boundaries. I tell them what I wish someone had told me, that your value isn't determined by parental approval, that success comes in many forms, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to say no to destructive patterns. My relationship with my birth family remains a work in progress, some days better than others. Some wounds are still tender. Yet, I found peace in accepting what is rather than yearning for what might have been. The family I was born into may never fully understand or appreciate me, but the family I've built through meaningful connections sustains and enriches my life in ways I never thought possible. So, I ask you, what family patterns have you had to break in your own life? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with people you love? Share your experiences in the comments below, and let me know if my story resonated with you in any way. If you found value in this journey, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming family challenges and finding your own path. Remember that sometimes the most powerful gift we can give ourselves is the courage to redefine what family means on our own terms. Thank you for listening, and may you find the strength to create the connections you deserve, not just the ones you were born into.